Alright, so it's been about a week since this happened. Finally gotten to the point where I feel comfortable sitting down and writing this, more as a precautionary tale than anything else. Whatever you do, do not go hiking Hell's Canyon in Kootenays National Forest. There are things there that do not want us trespassing on their territory and will kill to protect it. Cast. Anon, me. GF, my girlfriend. JT, my partner in crime and best friend up here. MT, his wife. RM, mutual friend of JT and I. Based black dude and an active Second Amendment supporter. BS, about a week ago. RM and his girlfriend just broke up and he was super down and depressed. JT and I decided to take him along camping with us since shooting things in the woods with friends is always a good time, plus booze and other party favors for back at camp. Day of the trip comes, we load up our vehicles and head out into the national forest. Drive like 20 miles out into the woods on old logging roads and random trails. Park our vehicles in a triangle and set up camp in the middle. Set up some trip lines between the vehicles in case of animals or people trying to get in camp. JT and I decide to get some wood while RM helps the girls set up camp. Grab my girlfriend's .22 mag revolver since I didn't want to dig out the holster for my .357 mag. Walking out in the woods, I get a feeling something is watching us, and let JT know something didn't feel right. We both come to the conclusion that it's probably a cougar. There have been sightings of them in the forest. Start talking loudly and singing old country songs that we know, but I still have that nagging feeling that something is watching us. Unholster the little .22 mag revolver and tell JT to cover his ears. Fire 2 rounds into the ground and keep going. Feel slightly relieved as we find a down tree to chop up for firewood. After about 45 minutes we chopped the entire tree down to bits and start carrying everything back. Feeling in my gut comes back that we're being watched. Look at JT and he motions with his head to something in the distance. Black form dips back into the underbrush. Fucking lovely, it's a bear, I say to JT. Start hurrying back to camp as neither of us wanted to deal with a bear with only a .22 mag revolver and a Glock 19. Arrive back to camp and find RM, girlfriend, and MT have camp set up and had gotten a small fire going with twigs and whatnot from the campsite. Tell them about the bear and start securing the food in the camp to be safe. All food is now in the center of the camp behind tripwires and vehicles. About 10 p.m. all thoughts of the bear are out of our minds, and we'd decided to crack some of the beers we brought. Start telling stories while drinking beers. RM and JT are talking about past deployment stories, I'm talking about my hijinks from international travel, and girlfriend tells of growing up in cartel country near the border. As we're talking, hear glass shatter and the car alarm starts going ballistic on RM's car. RM, JT, and I grab our rifles and start scanning the area. Hey Anon, JT shouts, what's that over there? Black figure running off into the woods. RM is understandably pissed and unloads a few rounds in that direction before JT and I tell him to stop since we don't want to accidentally shoot someone. Take shifts sleeping just in case it wants to come back. Next morning we check out the damage to RM's truck. Nothing major, just a broken window. RM and JT start talking about something while I go look for any signs of it in the direction where it ran off. Find nothing. Collectively shake it off as just being a hungry animal or something. Back at camp, girlfriend comes up and tells me she and Mount want to go back home. RM handed them his keys and a walkie-talkie, then said take my truck, and head back. Radio if there's a problem. The three of us decide to stick around and see if we can salvage this trip since we still wanted to go shooting. Grab our guns from our rigs and throw our mags and targets in our backpacks. Start hiking to the pit we saw on the way in to set up our targets. Bit later on the hike we find a neat-looking trail heading up a hill with a creek and a bunch of waterfalls. Decide that we're going to hike that trail instead. Not really scared of last night's events anymore as there's 3 of us and we're all sober. As we head up the path, the unmistakable sound of engines start coming up the trail we were just on. 3 guys on dirt bikes and ATVs come up the trail and stop near us. Well, you 3 look like you're loaded for bear. Going to need that shit if you're going up Hell's Canyon. What.jpg. Figure it's just some good old boys trying to scare us as we were all in our mid-20s and didn't look like we belonged in the woods. Start up the trail. After about an hour, that feeling of being watched came back with a vengeance. Go to inform the other 2, but RM stopped me. Hold up, just saw something up on that ridgeline. Look up just as something kicked some small pebbles down on us. We all decide to keep going as nothing could safely fall that far on us to attack, and all 3 of us had rifles. Moving on a bit and we had a few more experiences like the last, but nothing that really scared us. About 5 miles down the canyon, all 3 of us start smelling this weird smell of death. Start looking around and notice the carcass of something, so decomposed that I couldn't make it out. JT and RM both shout out to look over their direction. More carcass piles of random animals. Then we see it, a freshly killed deer. The blood wasn't coagulated, and the carcass was still warm. Then we hear it. A loud snarl coming from up the canyon. A pitch-black animal started coming up towards us. At first I thought it was a wolf, but it was too big, pitch black, and the fur was almost non-existent. Picture something like a pit bull but much bigger and with a head that looked like a Rottweiler. At this point the air starts to smell of sulfur over the smell of rotting carcasses. RM and I level our rifle on it as we started to back off, when JT grabbed us and pointed up the canyon. 3 more of the things were up there and making their way down towards us. I fully admit I lost my shit there as I was not prepared for this. Level my AK at the one coming from further up the canyon towards us. Fire off 3 rounds into it. Even with a ringing in my ears I can hear the 3 rounds make the unmistakable thump of bullets hitting a living target. Watch the animal stagger and some black fluid come out of it. After a few seconds it started coming back at us. While this was happening, JT and RM picked targets coming down the hill and lit them up. Same thing. They get staggered but keep coming. Smell of sulfur gets worse. See more of these things start coming out from what must have been a den behind a bunch of fallen trees. Collectively decide to book it back down the canyon. Every now and again we take turns to turn around and shoot a few rounds at them, still just as effective as the first time we tried it. For whatever reason they aren't trying to catch up to us. They're all hanging back about 20 to 30 yards. Then we notice it. 4 more in front of us. Shout to just dump the mags while running to try and stagger them enough to get past. Actually manage to blow the leg off of one, but it's still trying to hobble. Ones behind us start rapidly closing the gap. Then we hear it. Engines. Our gunfire attracted some Forest Service guys who were nearby clearing some fallen trees that were blocking the Forest Service roads out there. They see what's happening and yell for us to hop on their ATVs. We book it back down the canyon to the road. Tell them where we parked and they give us a lift there. Back at camp ask them what the fuck those things were. Forest Service guys have no idea. They'd assumed they were wolves and had just ignored them. Tell them they were by no means wolves and ask how many times they'd seen them. Told us they'd been there since most of the old-timers out there could remember. Never really bothered anybody though. We thanked the Forest Service guys, passed them a few beers, and hurriedly throw our shit in the vehicles. Book it out of there and head back to JT's house. Upon meeting the girls, ask us if we were fucking around with the walkie-talkies. Tell them no, and ask why. apparently while they were driving back. Voices came on singing very distorted versions of the country songs JT and I were singing while we were getting wood. All of us agree to never go camp out there again. Honestly, I think we came face to face with hellhounds, but I have no idea if that's the case. I know that whatever these are, they didn't die despite all the rounds we dumped in them. They also seemed far too smart, muscular, and tall to be wolves. Not to mention the fact that they seemed to have been able to imitate our singing according to my girlfriend and MT.